Humans often repeat the same mistake in different forms. One of the most common patterns, returning emotionally, mentally, or physically to someone who has already left, not just in relationships that ended explicitly, but also in those that faded quietly, or were never fully there to begin with. This behavior seems illogical to an outsider. Why revisit pain? Why long for someone who showed you they were done? But to the human brain, the pull makes sense, because the person may be gone, but the emotional blueprint they left behind remains. This video explores why people keep reaching back to old relationships, unfinished memories, unresolved pain, not because they miss the person, but because they are still trying to finish the story. 1. Unfinished business and cognitive dissonance. The human brain craves resolution. When something ends without closure, it creates cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding conflicting emotions or thoughts. You know they're gone. But part of you still acts like they might come back, still checks the phone, still replays conversations, still creates imaginary scenarios where things worked out. This is the mind trying to solve an emotional riddle, like a computer caught in an endless loop. It can't exit the program until it gets an output. So you stay stuck, not because you want to, but because your brain hasn't finished processing what happened. In this way, longing becomes a coping mechanism, not a desire to return, but a strategy to make sense of the loss. 2. Nostalgia distorts. Memory is not a reliable narrator. When someone is gone, memory becomes selective. Painful moments blur, beautiful ones sharpen. What was inconsistent suddenly seems rare and magical. This is called rosy retrospection, the tendency to view the past more positively than it was. You remember how they smiled, but not how they disappeared. You remember the trip, the night, the moment, but not the aftermath. This selective memory fuels longing. You begin to miss someone who may never have truly existed, at least not in the way you remember them. The brain chooses comfort over truth, and nostalgia becomes a filter that edits the pain. 3. Emotional dependency and withdrawal. When you invest time, energy, and vulnerability into someone, your brain forms a neurological attachment. This attachment is reinforced by chemical processes: oxytocin during closeness, dopamine during good memories, cortisol during conflict and stress. When the relationship ends, the body goes into withdrawal. This isn't just emotional, it's chemical. It mirrors addiction, restlessness, sleeplessness, cravings, emotional highs and lows. So returning to someone who's gone feels like chasing a fix, not because they were good for you, but because they activated a specific emotional rhythm that your body learned to depend on. 4. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. Pain that is familiar often feels safer than peace that is unknown. If someone grew up in emotionally unstable or neglectful environments, that chaos becomes their baseline for love. So when they meet someone who leaves or withholds affection or creates emotional highs and lows, they mistake that pattern for passion. They don't return to the person because of love. They return because their nervous system is wired to feel safest in emotional instability. Peace feels unfamiliar. Kindness feels suspicious. Safety feels boring. So they chase the past, not because it made them whole, but because it matched their wounds. 5. Ego and the need to rewrite the ending. Being left often triggers an ego wound. It whispers, "You weren't enough." So the mind tries to rewrite the narrative, fantasizing that they regret leaving, imagining a perfect reunion, stalking them for signs of unfinished feelings. This isn't love. It's the ego attempting to turn pain into proof of worth. You want them back not to build a future, but to validate your past. You want to be chosen by the person who didn't, because your self-esteem is still tied to their approval. Ironically, the more they wounded you, the more powerful their validation becomes. It becomes a chase, not for connection, but for redemption. 6. Hope as a survival mechanism. Hope keeps humans alive. It gets them through illness, war, heartbreak. But hope can become a trap when it delays acceptance. People cling to false hope. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they just need time. Maybe I was the problem. Hope becomes a way to avoid grief, to delay the collapse, to stay in motion. Because finality feels like death. Hope feels like survival. But not all hope is healing. Some of it is denial. And when you keep going back to someone who's already gone, you're not holding on to them. You're holding on to what you hoped they could be. The person is gone, but the pattern remains. People return to the past not because it was good, but because it was known. They aren't chasing love. They're chasing closure. They aren't craving connection. They're craving what the person represented: validation, familiarity, a second chance at being seen. But healing comes not from chasing ghosts. It comes from asking harder questions. Why did I need them to stay? What part of me is still looking for them in empty rooms? What am I really trying to fix by going back? When you answer those questions, the craving starts to fade. Because it was never about them, it was about you. And they are already gone. But now maybe you can leave too.